Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Judge Walter Friedman entered the courtroom and scanned everyone in the room with authority. Connor sat at the defense table with an expression of calmness bordering on indifference. A few meters away from him, at the plaintiff's table, his ex-wife Olivia was wiping tears from her eyes with a tissue, and her lawyer was patting her shoulder comfortingly. The court is now in session to hear the case of the restraining order petition. The judge announced, Bennett versus Bennett. Connor watched Olivia's elaborate performance. She looked fragile, dressed in a simple gray suit, her blonde hair hanging loosely over her shoulders in a deliberate attempt to create an image of abuse. It had been 3 months since they'd last seen each other, since she'd moved out of the house they'd shared for 7 years. Olivia's attorney stood up and said in a sympathetic voice, "Your Honor, my client Olivia Bennett has filed for a restraining order against her ex-husband, Connor Bennett. Over the past 7 years of her marriage, my client has suffered severe psychological abuse and threats. Since the separation, Mr. Connor's behavior has escalated to alarming levels." Connor listened to the attorney describe how he controlled Olivia's life, monitored her activities, and threatened her after she decided to leave. His lawyer, Andrea, gently touched his arm, reminding him to stay calm. "The plaintiff will now be heard," said the judge. Olivia walks to the witness stand, is sworn in, and sits down. Guided by her lawyer, she began to describe a completely twisted version of her marriage. "Connor is such a control freak," she said with a quiver in her voice. "He has to control every aspect of my life. My clothes, my social circle, even my job. He'll check my cell phone, monitor my mail. If I came home even half an hour late, he would interrogate me endlessly." She raised her moist eyes and looked at the court. "If I don't satisfy him, he will punish me. Sometimes not talking to me for days, sometimes canceling our plans, even deleting the draft of a novel I was working on. That's my heart and soul, something I spent 2 years creating." Connor clenched his fists, his nails almost digging into his palms. Not only did this woman betray him, but now she's accusing him in court. He never deleted any of her work and, in fact, encouraged her to write on several occasions, although he did express concern about the idea of her quitting her job to write full-time. "After the separation, it got worse," Olivia continued, her voice catching in her throat. "He started stalking me, showing up at my work, hanging out outside my apartment. I suspect he hacked into my email. I'm afraid to even go out alone." She describes several so-called incidents, how Connor happened to show up at a cafe she frequented, and how he threatened to reveal her secret. Every detail has been carefully distorted, molding ordinary coincidences into premeditated harassment. "Why are you filing for a restraining order now?" her lawyer asked gently. Olivia's emotions seemed to break down instantly. "Because I'm scared. He's a violent monster," she sobbed. "You don't understand how horrible he is. What's underneath that facade of perfection? He can look calm and restrained, but that's only on the surface. He can make you feel crazy and get everyone on his side. I just want to be safe." The judge turned to Connor. "Mr. Bennett, your attorney may begin cross-examination." Andrea stood up, her voice calm and professional. "Mrs. Bennett, can you tell the court about the first few years of your marriage?" Olivia hesitated. At first, okay, Connor was charming, successful, and seemed like the perfect husband. But as time went on, he became more and more controlling, more and more indifferent. "How did you meet?" "At an advertising agency. I'm the executive assistant. He's the creative director. He courted me for 3 months before he got a first date." "You mentioned that Mr. Connor punished you for being late. Can you describe these punishments specifically?" Olivia looks nervously at her lawyer. "He'll cold feet me, cancel our plans. Once, he deleted a draft of a novel I was working on." "Deleted a draft of your novel?" Andrea raised her eyebrows. "Is there any evidence of this in court?" "No," Olivia admitted. "It's on my computer, but it's my personal computer." "Mrs. Bennett, this is a very serious accusation," Andrea continued. "You claim that Mr. Bennett hacked into your private computer and deleted your work. Did you call the police? Or consulted a technical expert to try to recover the files?" "No, I was too scared. So, in fact, there's no evidence that Mr. Connor deleted anything or that this file ever existed, is there?" Olivia averted her gaze. "Technically, yes. You mentioned that Mr. Bennett may have hacked into your email. What evidence do you have to support this allegation? Some of my emails were marked as read, although I don't remember reading them. It could be a technical problem, or you've forgotten, right? I. I think so. Andrea pushed on. You described several incidents where Mr. Connor happened to show up at locations you frequented. Are all of these locations public places? Yes, but dash. Were these all places you frequented together during your marriage? Olivia stirred uneasily, some of it. As a matter of fact, that cafe you mentioned is a block away from Mr. Connor's office, and he was a regular there before you were married, wasn't he? I'm not sure, Olivia said vaguely. One last question, Mrs. Bennett. You mentioned that Mr. Connor threatened to reveal your secret. What are these secrets? The courtroom fell silent. Olivia's gaze drifts to Michael in the gallery, then back to the lawyer. Michael was visibly nervous, beads of sweat seeping from his forehead. I don't want to discuss this in court. I don't have any more questions, Andrea said, but we're prepared with counterclaim evidence. The judge nodded. Mr. Bennett, please take the stand. Connor was sworn in and sat calmly on the witness stand. Unlike Olivia's emotional performances, his voice is smooth and his gaze is straight ahead. He was dressed in a dark blue suit, neat and professional, the complete picture of a successful businessman. Mr. Bennett, his attorney began to inquire, can you describe the last year of your marriage? I noticed a change in Olivia's behavior, Connor replied, his voice steady. About a year ago, she started working late more often coming home late at night. Her explanations were always vague. When I expressed concern, she became unusually defensive. Have you noticed any other changes? Yes, Connor nodded. She started strictly guarding her cell phone, never leaving it alone. She started using passwords to lock down all devices, including the shared laptop that we all had access to before. Her spending patterns have also changed, buying tons of new clothes and perfumes, but never wearing them in front of me. How do these changes make you feel? I was worried that something was wrong with our marriage, Connor said honestly. I tried to talk to her, offered dates and counseling, but she always had a reason to say no. Did you ever threaten or intimidate her in any way? Never, Connor said firmly. I did ask her why she was staying out late because I was worried that our marriage was in crisis. After the separation, I did go to the cafe we used to go to, but not to stalk her. The cafe is near my office, and I've been a regular there since my college days. About the allegations of deleting drafts of her novels? Completely untrue, Connor said, pulling out a file. This is the access log for our shared cloud storage, showing detailed logs of all file operations. As you can see, no files were deleted during the time Olivia claims. In fact, our backup system automatically backs up all the files every 12 hours, so if any of the files are deleted, she's fully restored from the backup. Olivia's attorney stood up. Objection. These materials were not pre-submitted. This is a direct response to the plaintiff's testimony, Andrea countered, and these are publicly available records. The judge considered. Aloud. Continue. Andrea pulled out another file. Mr. Connor, what is this? This is a record of our calls and texts over the past year. It shows Olivia corresponding frequently, often late at night, with a man named Michael Reynolds. More than 50 text messages are exchanged per day, and talk time averages 45 minutes per day. Olivia's face turns white. Michael shifted uneasily in the gallery. Who is this Michael Reynolds? Andrea asked. Michael is Olivia's co-worker, a junior advertising copywriter. He used to go to company events with Olivia, and I've seen him a couple times. Connor continues calmly. After I noticed these unusual communication patterns, I began to suspect that Olivia might be cheating. As painful as it is, it explains the change in her behavior. However, I soon realized that the situation was more complicated than a simple affair. He pulls out more documents. These are copies of the emails I found Olivia kept in secret. She accidentally synchronized her entire correspondence history with Michael on her computer. Not only do these emails confirm their affair, but they also show that they planned to steal my company's customer information, taking advantage of Olivia's privileged access as an executive assistant. The courtroom was silent. Olivia's lawyer looks totally shocked. What does this have to do with a restraining order petition? Andrea asked. Olivia claims that I spied on and controlled her. Connor explains calmly. The truth is, I found out that she repeatedly lied to me about her whereabouts, betraying not only our marriage, but my business trust as well. When I began to question these inconsistencies, she immediately accused me of being controlling and paranoid. It became her standard response, a diversionary tactic. Connor continued, I believe this restraining order application is a continuation of the same strategy to preempt a possible commercial espionage lawsuit I may file against her. By portraying me as a dangerous controller, she's trying to undermine my credibility and create excuses for her behavior. The judge nodded gravely. Proceed. Andrea hands Connor a sealed envelope. Can you tell the court what this is? This is evidence gathered by my private investigator that Olivia's affair with Michael Reynolds lasted at least a year, including hotel records, photographs, and other evidence of their intimacy. Olivia's attorney immediately jumped up. Objection. How was this so-called evidence obtained? This could involve illegal surveillance. Connor looked at the judge. Investigators have only collected evidence in public places and publicly available records. There was no invasion of privacy. The judge held out his hand. I want to see the contents of this envelope. The tension in the courtroom was almost palpable as Connor's attorney handed the judge the envelope. The judge opened the envelope and began to read the papers inside. As he read on, his expression became more and more serious. There's more to this, the judge finally said, his voice becoming low and angry. And it's not just about evidence of an extramarital affair. Mrs. Bennett, can you explain why your personal bank account has received large transfers from Mr. Reynolds' company in the last 6 months at? And why did these transfers coincide with the switch of your husband's clients from his advertising agency to Mr. Reynolds' newly formed company? The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Olivia's eyes widened and her lips trembled. Michael looks ready to flee the courtroom immediately. That's our normal business partnership, Olivia stammered. I do consulting work for Michael's new company. While you were still an employee of your husband's company? The judge's voice was skeptical. These documents show that you used your position to pass confidential client information to Mr. Reynolds and then helped him poach those clients. This looks like commercial espionage, Mrs. Bennett. The judge flipped through more documents, his frown deepening. Here are also emails of you and Mr. Reynolds discussing how to use false domestic violence allegations to destroy your husband. He looked up at Olivia sternly. You clearly wrote in one of your emails, no one is going to believe him once the restraining order goes into effect. We can easily take the rest of our clients. Olivia's attorney looks totally shocked as he turns to his client. Is this true? Olivia opened her mouth to deny it, but the judge had already held up a document. Here is your signature, Mrs. Bennett, on an agreement promising to share with Mr. Reynolds the profits from client lists and marketing strategies acquired from your husband's company. Bailiff, arrest this woman immediately, thundered the judge, on suspicion of perjury, commercial defamation, and commercial espionage. He turned to Connor. Mr. Bennett, are you aware that your wife has not only betrayed your marriage, but is trying to systematically destroy your career? A flicker of emotion, an icy satisfaction, finally flashed across Connor's expression. I had my suspicions, but I need hard evidence. The cop walks toward Olivia, while another cop walks toward a panicked Michael. Please make sure that Mr. Reynolds does not leave either, the judge instructed. He is equally required to answer these charges. When the bailiff handcuffed Olivia, she finally lost her cool. It's not fair. You don't even know his true colors. He planned it all. He's ruined us. Connor just looked at her calmly, but the chill in his eyes was chilling. You've ruined us, Olivia. I just gathered evidence. The judge stopped her, shouting with a stern voice. That's enough. The feds out there want to know where you're hiding those client files and trade secrets. You better cooperate, or it's only going to get worse. As Olivia was led out of the courtroom, she turned to Connor and shouted, You're going to regret this. You don't know what else I know. Connor just looked at her calmly, his mind calculating what she might know and how to prevent any possible retaliation. 7 years of marriage ended at this moment. Not with a peaceful breakup, not with an ordinary divorce, but with an explosive revelation of betrayal, deception, and crime. Outside the courtroom, the sun shone brightly, as if mocking this farce of a life. Connor stood on the courthouse steps and took a deep breath, feeling the satisfaction of justice. But he knew that this was only the beginning. Now that Olivia and Michael have been exposed, He must rebuild everything they destroyed: his company's reputation, his client relationships, and his personal life. Andrea walked up to him. "Congratulations, Connor. The judge is totally on our side. Not only was the restraining order petition denied, he issued a temporary restraining order preventing Olivia from approaching you or your office." "What next?" Connor asked. "The prosecution will consider criminal charges. Given the gravity of the evidence, they are likely to prosecute. In the meantime, we can begin a civil suit to recover damages. We have a strong case for punitive damages." Connor nodded. "Start getting ready. I want them to pay, not just for me, but for the clients they're ripping off." As he walked toward the parking lot, Connor noticed a familiar figure leaning against his car. Nathan, his old friend and the private investigator who helped gather the evidence. "Nice work," Nathan said, handing Connor a cup of coffee. "I heard about the courtroom. Things went more smoothly than expected." "Thanks to your work," Connor replied, sipping his coffee. "Without that crucial evidence, especially the bank records, things could have been completely different." Nathan nodded gravely. "When I took the case, I just wanted to help you prove that she cheated. I never expected to find commercial espionage. The audacity of their plan is astounding." "Not just cheating," Connor said, a hint of bitterness in his voice, "but an elaborate plot to destroy everything I am." Connor Bennett never thought his life would turn out like this. At the age of 33, he had it all: a successful position as a creative director in an advertising agency, an enviable marriage, and a beautiful house on the edge of town. Now, 8 months later, he stands in his empty living room, ready to sell the house that was once filled with laughter. The collapse of a marriage begins with a series of tiny clues. First, it was the change in Olivia's work hours, then her defensive reaction to his concern, then the protective grip of her cell phone, and finally the unfamiliar scent of perfume from those overtime nights. As a man who makes his living through creativity and observation, Connor quickly pieced together the facts. But he chose to err on the side of caution and gather evidence rather than make hasty accusations. Looking at the empty house, all the memories came flooding back. He has celebrated successful ad campaigns here, hosted barbecue parties in the backyard, and snuggled with Olivia in front of the fireplace on winter nights. Now, those memories are tainted by her deceit and betrayal. "Are you okay?" Nathan asked, standing in the doorway. As a private investigator, it was Nathan who helped Connor expose Olivia and Michael's betrayal. "I'll be fine," Connor replied, looking around the place he'd once called home. "It'll just take time. You know, even I didn't expect to find evidence of commercial espionage," Nathan said. "I was just looking for evidence of her affair. I am shocked every time I think about the contents of those emails and text messages. Did they really think they could get away with it?" Connor laughed bitterly. The irony is, if she had just cheated, maybe things wouldn't be so complicated. But she and Michael wanted more. They not only want to be together, they want my clients, my career, even my reputation. When I look back at the whole process, I can hardly believe how blind I was. "Don't be too hard on yourself," Nathan said. "You trust your wife. That's normal. Who would have thought she would betray you so completely?" Connor walks toward the window and looks out at the street. "You know what pisses me off the most? It's not just her cheating or business espionage. It's her behavior in court, that cold-blooded lie. She actually tried to convince everyone that I was an abuser, a control freak, a violent monster. She knew she was caught," Nathan commented, "and that was her only defense. She almost made it." Connor shook his head. "Without those emails as evidence, if the judge had believed her, my life is over. My career will be ruined, and I could face criminal charges. And all because she wanted more, wanted a life she thought I couldn't give." That night in a quiet bar, Connor and Nathan reviewed the events of the past few months. At first, it's the painful discovery of Olivia's affair with Michael, then the shocking realization that they're systematically poaching his clients. "She thinks I'll never find out," Connor said, sipping his whiskey. "Or she thinks that even if I do, I'll crumble like a poor betrayed husband, unable to fight back." Nathan nodded. "Most would. But you're not most people, Connor. Your calm and strategic thinking is impressive." "Damn advertising industry training," Connor said with a bitter smile. "Always teaching us to think 10 paces ahead and anticipate our opponent's actions. I never thought about using those skills in my marriage." You know what the worst part is? Connor continued, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. It's not her betrayal. It's what she did to cover it up. She started claiming that I was controlling her, spying on her, convincing all my friends that I was a paranoid control freak. She's actually rewriting the entire history of our marriage, casting herself as the victim. The classic projection mentality, Nathan commented, of transferring one's own guilt onto an innocent party. And then the restraining order. Connor's voice turned cold. She went so far as to claim I was a violent monster. If I don't have proof, if the judge believes her. He didn't finish the sentence, but both men knew how serious the consequences would be. Not only his reputation, but his career, his future, everything could be destroyed. But she didn't get away with it, Nathan reminds him. And now she's facing charges of perjury, commercial espionage, and possible fraud. Connor stared at the glass. It's not enough. What do you mean? She almost destroyed everything for me, Nathan. My marriage, my reputation, my career. If my investigation had been slower, if the judge hadn't seen the full evidence, I'll lose everything. And she thinks she can get away with it? Get out in a couple years and start over? No. I'm going to make sure that she and Michael never make a comeback. Nathan eyed his friend warily. Connor, what are you planning? The law will deal with her. Connor shook his head, a cold determination shining in his eyes. The law will only give her a symbolic punishment. Maybe a couple years of house arrest, maybe probation. And then what? She'll start over, find another victim. And Michael? Apparently he's just being used as a witness and won't be prosecuted. I can't take it. You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? Nathan asked worriedly. Violence only makes things worse. Connor almost laughed. Violence? Do you really think I'd be that cheap? No, what I want is justice that she can't escape. I'm going to make sure they don't get a foot in the door, in any business, in any circle. How? Connor takes the last sip of his whiskey. I have a plan, and I need your help. Over the next few weeks, Connor seemed to return to his normal life. He focuses on rebuilding his ad agency, regaining lost clients, and rebuilding friendships that were damaged by Olivia's lies. But underneath the surface, he's crafting a plan, one that will cost Olivia and Michael their lives. Olivia's trial is set for 3 months from now. During this period, she was released on bail, but was restricted from leaving the city and required to report regularly to her probation officer. Michael was granted immunity from the prosecution as a key witness, and although he lost some of his clients, his new company is still in business. Connor scrutinized Michael's business structure and client relationships. As an accomplished advertiser, he knows that information is power and knows how to find a person's weaknesses and exploit them. He discovers that Michael has a secret. His new company relies heavily on one big client to keep it afloat, the Harrington Group, a family business known for its business ethics. Meanwhile, Connor was watching Olivia's activities. She has begun to rebrand herself in social circles, claiming that she is a victim of corporate politics and that the court charges are a misunderstanding. She has even contacted several publishers about writing a memoir about surviving a toxic relationship. Connor gathered all of this information while developing a multi-layered plan. He hired several specialized digital forensics experts, a reputation management consultant, and a public relations specialist familiar with media operations. Everyone knows only part of the plan. No one knows the whole picture. One Tuesday morning, Michael receives an anonymous email with a photo of him and Olivia together, along with transcripts of their conversations plotting to steal Connor's clients, even the previously unexposed ones. The email was short and to the point. Tomorrow morning, all of this will be sent to the management and board of directors of the Harrington Group, unless you contact us immediately to discuss a solution. There is an encrypted contact form at the end of the email. Michael called Olivia immediately. We're in trouble, he said nervously. Someone has more evidence. They threatened to tell Harrington. It's got to be Connor, Olivia said through gritted teeth. He won't stop. What do we do? If Harrington finds out, we're screwed. It's my only big client. Calm down, Olivia ordered. I'll deal with Connor. Maybe I can convince him to withdraw some of the charges in exchange for our silence. Later that night, Olivia showed up in front of Connor's new apartment. She was well-dressed in a tailored blue dress, Connor's once-favorite color, in an attempt to evoke their past relationship. Connor calmly lets her in, but keeps his distance. I know it was you, she said bluntly. with those emails threatening Michael. Connor raised an eyebrow. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't pretend. Olivia snapped. We know it's you. What do you want? Money? I know divorce can have a big impact on your finances. Connor almost laughed. You think this is about money? After you tried to ruin everything for me. What's that? Revenge? What's in it for you? Justice, Connor said calmly. The two of you have systematically betrayed me, stolen my clients, and destroyed my reputation. You even tried to put me in jail with a bogus restraining order. There should be consequences for such behavior. Olivia suddenly changed tactics, her voice softening. Connor, we used to love each other. I know I made a mistake, and I'm sorry. Maybe we can. She stepped forward and reached out to touch his cheek. Connor took a step back, the ice in her eyes stopping her. Don't waste your show. You're not here to apologize. You're here to protect Michael and yourself. What the hell do you want? Her tone resumed its sharpness, and anger flashed in her eyes. I want you and Michael to experience what it's like to be betrayed. Connor's voice was disturbingly calm. And I want you to understand that some actions have a price. What are you talking about? Wait and see. Connor replied simply. Don't try to manipulate me again, Olivia. That no longer works. Olivia's mask finally cracked, and real hatred showed in her eyes. You think you're so smart, don't you? You don't know what else we've got up our sleeve. You're gonna regret this, Connor. I'll make sure you're never happy. She slams the door in anger, leaving Connor alone to contemplate her threat. He knew Olivia wasn't a toothless tiger. She did have the ability to do damage. But he was ready. The next morning, Michael was horrified to discover that his company's website and social media accounts had been hacked. Instead of professional advertising work, the site featured photos of him and Olivia and their conspiracy to steal Connor's clients' email and text message records. Most striking is a video of Olivia clearly admitting how she made up lies about Connor to cover up her extramarital affairs and business espionage. Meanwhile, the Harrington Group received a detailed report documenting how Michael had used unethical means to acquire clients and his complicity with Olivia. The report includes audio recordings of them discussing how they deceived clients, as well as evidence of tampering with ad performance data. The phone immediately rang off the hook. The CEO of Harrington Group personally called and angrily terminated all cooperation. Other small clients have followed suit. By noon, Michael's company was effectively dead. He frantically tries to reach Olivia, but her phone goes unanswered. Meanwhile, Olivia receives an urgent call from her lawyer. The prosecutor obtained new evidence that her crimes were more serious and systematic than initially believed. They withdrew their previous plea agreements and now seek harsher sentences. They have a recording of you, the attorney explained, describing in detail how you plan to destroy Connor's career and reputation. They also have emails between you and Reynolds discussing how to use restraining orders as a distraction tactic while stealing more customers. Worst of all, there is evidence that you have provided false information to the media suggesting that Connor has ethical issues and customer fraud. This can't be right. Olivia shouted. These emails and recordings are private. How could they have? I don't know, but they're evidence now. And it's certified, so there's no question of illegal collection. Olivia, this is serious. Instead of months of house arrest, you could be looking at years in prison. Olivia hangs up and immediately tries to contact Michael, but his phone is also turned off. She opened her laptop to check the news and found that several trade media outlets had already covered the scandal. A leading weekly advertising magazine even featured the entire incident as its cover story, with the headline, "The End of Trust, the Biggest Betrayal in Advertising." The article quotes personal exchanges between her and Michael detailing how they manipulated clients and lied to Connor. Meanwhile, her social media accounts were flooded with negative comments. Former friends and coworkers have cut her off. The publisher withdrew interest in her memoir. It was as if she had become an overnight poison to be avoided by everyone in the industry. On the other side of town, Connor and Nathan are sitting in a secluded cafe. How did you do it? Nathan asked in surprise. Those additional pieces of evidence, website hacks, media reports. This is more than just your run-of-the-mill revenge scheme. Connor sipped his coffee. I haven't done anything illegal, if that's what you're worried about. I just utilized the resources and contacts I had. After 10 years in advertising, you get to know all kinds of people. Information security expert, media contact, former prosecutor. All that new evidence. It was all legally obtained, Connor explains. And Olivia was so confident that she thought that once she deleted the apparent emails and messages, everything would be fine. But she forgot about cloud backups and the fact that digital traces don't disappear easily. I just found the right person to recover that information. Olivia Bennett walked out of the courtroom door, clutching her attorney's arm. Immediately, flashbulbs went off and reporters poured in, shouting questions. Mrs. Bennett, how do you feel about the 7-year sentence? Do you think the sentence is too harsh? What is your response to the prosecution's allegation that you fabricated false allegations about your ex-husband, Connor? Her attorney held up his hand. My client will not comment. We plan to appeal. As they try to make their way through the media circus, Olivia notices a familiar figure standing in the distance. Connor stood across the street, hands in his pockets, observing the scene with an expressionless face. Their eyes met briefly in the confusion, and she saw no triumph in his eyes, only a calm certainty. Connor didn't come close, and he didn't make any statement. As Olivia was escorted into the waiting vehicle, he simply turned and walked away, his back firm and calm. A year later, Connor was sitting in the office of his rebuilt ad agency. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the city skyline. The computer on the desk shows the latest quarterly report. The company is not only back on its feet, it's stronger than ever. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. His new assistant, Emma, stood in the doorway. Mr. Bennett, Mr. Reynolds is waiting for you in reception. Connor raised an eyebrow. Since Michael's company folded, he'd barely heard from the man. Last I heard, Michael was working as a sales rep for a small printing company on the other side of town. Let him in, Connor said, adjusting his tie. Connor barely recognized Michael when he walked into the office. The once confident and arrogant man now looks haggard, with thinning hair and deep dark circles under his eyes. His suit looked cheap and wrinkled. Sit down, Connor gestured, neither hostility nor sympathy in his voice. Michael sat down and looked around the high-end office uneasily. Thanks for meeting me, Connor. I know you have no reason to do this after everything that's happened. What do you want, Michael? I need a job, Michael said directly, and no one will hire me. Once they Google my name, they'll find all the stories about the scandal. Connor leaned back in his chair, studying the man sitting across from him. Why do you think I'm helping you? I don't expect your forgiveness. Michael looked down at his hands. But I've lost everything. My career, my reputation. And Olivia? Connor asked calmly. Michael looked up with bitterness in his eyes. She cut off contact the second month she was in prison. Said I was a burden. Of course she will. Once Michael was of no use to her, he was discarded. Connor sighed. You need to understand, Michael. It's not just that you stole my wife. You two conspired to destroy my career, my reputation. You guys almost made it. I know, Michael's voice was almost a whisper. I have no excuse. Why me? Connor asked, a question that had been on his mind for a long time. Why my company? My client? My wife? Michael looked a little surprised. You really don't know? Because you've won everything. You have the talent I've always wanted. The Williamson account was supposed to be mine, but they chose you. Then there's the Thomas Project. You were always better than me, and I. He paused. I want to prove that I can take everything you have, including Olivia. Connor pondered these words. Pure jealousy and ambition drove this man to almost destroy his life. I can't help you, Michael, Connor said finally. Not in my company. But, he pulled a business card out of a drawer. I know a guy in Chicago. Tell him I recommended you. He's willing to give you a chance to start over. Michael took the card dumbfounded. Why? After what I did to you. Connor looked him straight in the eye. Not for you. It's for myself. I don't want hate to define the rest of my life. But don't get me wrong. I'm not forgiving you. I'm just choosing to move on. When Michael left, he looked slightly straighter than when he came in. Connor wasn't sure if he'd take that chance, but it was no longer his concern. 2 weeks later, Connor stood alone outside the state prison, waiting for his monthly visit. It was his first time here, even though Olivia had served over a year. He went through security and was directed to the visitors area. When Olivia was brought in, she visibly froze. Of all the people who might visit, the one she least expected was Connor. Why are you here? She asked immediately after sitting down, her voice defensive. Prison life had left visible marks on her once refined appearance. Her blonde hair had lost its luster, and her once shining eyes were now wary and tired. I need some answers, Connor said calmly. The truth. Olivia laughed, a bitter laugh. And now you come seeking the truth? After you destroyed my life. I destroyed your life? Connor's voice stayed calm. You made up lies about me abusing you. You tried to put me in jail with a bogus restraining order. You and Michael conspired to steal my clients and destroy my business. Now you accuse me. A flicker of shame flashed in Olivia's eyes, but was quickly replaced by anger. You don't understand why I'm doing this, do you? You never really knew me, Connor. Then tell me, he responded. That's what I came here to hear. Olivia took a deep breath, as if weighing how much to reveal. I married you because you were the safe choice. Promising, stable, reliable. But there's more to life than stability and reliability, Connor. It should be passionate, adventurous. So you betrayed me because I was too reliable. No, she shook her head. It's because you never really cared about me. You care about your career, your accomplishments, your vision of the perfect life. I'm just an accessory in that picture. Do you know my dream of quitting my job to focus on writing? Did you encourage me? No. You said that wasn't realistic. Connor thought back to the conversations. He did tell her it wasn't financially wise to write full-time, but that was out of concern, wasn't it? With Michael, I feel seen and appreciated, Olivia continues, and he values my ideas, my dreams. So you've decided to destroy me together? Olivia is at least honest enough to be ashamed of this. That wasn't the original plan. It started out as an affair. Then Michael saw an opportunity and convinced me to help him start his own company. Affair STH. Upgraded. Where's the restraining order? Is that part of the escalation of things? It was an act of desperation, she admitted. We were afraid you already knew everything and needed a distraction. Connor shook his head in disbelief at her selfishness. Do you know what will happen if that restraining order is granted? I'll lose everything. My company, my reputation, and possibly my freedom. I wasn't thinking that far ahead, Olivia said softly. I was just trying to protect myself. And Michael, they fall silent. Years of deceit, betrayal, and revenge creating an unbridgeable chasm between them. Look, I'm not looking for a settlement, Connor said coldly. I just want to make sure of one thing. The Swiss account, the one you and Michael used to move the money. Any other co-conspirators? A flash of panic flashed in Olivia's eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't pretend, Connor pressed on. The prosecution may be satisfied with a guilty plea from you and Michael, but I know there's more to this circle than just the two of you. I've found out that you're being assisted by someone within the Harrington Group and by the mysterious investor who's never been seen. Olivia's eyes widened slightly, and Connor knew he'd hit the nail on the head. Alex Harrington, she finally whispered, was the one who introduced Michael to me. He wants your ideas, your client relationships. They're planning to acquire the remains of your company. It's just that I didn't go broke as planned. Connor finished her sentence with an icy gleam in his eye. Thanks for confirming that. As he got up to leave, Olivia suddenly grabbed the railing. What are you going to do? Connor, don't mess with Harrington. He's out of your league. Connor turned, a smile on his face that sent shivers down her spine. You really think I've only dealt with you and Michael in the past year? Why do you think Harrington Group shares plunged 30%? Why did the board suddenly launch an internal investigation into Alex? Olivia's face turns pale. This can't be. You can't possibly. That evidence, those emails and recordings that the prosecutor mysteriously obtained, Connor said calmly, is just the tip of the iceberg. I still have a lot of it, just in case. I should hate you. Olivia's voice trembled. But I can only admire your thoroughness. You don't even have to get your hands dirty to destroy the enemy. That's the difference between us, Olivia. Connor looked down at her. You betrayed for personal gain, not caring who you hurt. I am taking revenge for justice, to make sure that every co-conspirator pays. As Connor leaves, Olivia's words follow him. You're scarier than I thought, Connor. I wish I'd seen that in the first place. Connor didn't look back, but the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. That was exactly the effect he was looking for. Let her realize for the rest of her life that not only did she lose a loving husband, but she angered an adversary she knew nothing about. 3 years later, Connor stood in his company's top-floor office overlooking the city. Today, Bennett Creative is one of the region's most respected advertising agencies, known for its innovation and integrity. Connor's assistant knocked softly on the door and walked into the office. Mr. Bennett, I've just received word that the Harrington Group has officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Alex Harrington has been forced to resign from all positions. Connor nodded slightly. Thank you, Emma. What about that news about Michael Reynolds? Confirmed. His position in Chicago was terminated. According to our sources, he is now working as a cashier in a small print store, barely making ends meet. Where's Olivia? Emma checked the tablet in her hand. Ms. Bennett was granted parole last month, but the conditions of her parole are very strict. She currently lives in a small apartment in the South Side and works part-time at a chain coffee shop. No publisher would give her a chance, even though she had been trying to market her novel. To make matters worse, her parole officer required her to take weekly polygraphs to make sure she wasn't in contact with any former co-conspirators. Connor turned to the window and smiled in satisfaction. Perfect. Emma hesitated. Sir, if I may ask, why do you continue to track them? You've already won. Connor looked out the window at the busy city. Because some lessons need to be remembered forever, Emma. When someone tries to destroy everything you've got, you not only fight back, you make sure they never get back up. Your 4 o'clock appointment is here. Emma changed the subject. Mrs. Diana Wright, the owner of that fashion magazine. Connor straightened his suit and prepared to meet the potentially large client. When Diana walked into the office, he was immediately impressed by her confidence and sharp gaze, a far cry from Olivia's coquettishness and Michael's hypocrisy. Mr. Bennett, it's nice to finally meet you. Diana shook his hand. I've been following your work for a long time. Just call me Connor, he responded. Have a seat. Tell me what you need. Frankly, I did a lot of research before I decided to work with you, Diana said bluntly, including the part about your personal experience. Connor raised an eyebrow. My divorce and subsequent legal troubles? Yes, Diana replied frankly. That's exactly why I chose you. I need someone who understands what betrayal tastes like and can exact complete revenge. My ex-partner stole my designs, and I want to make him pay. Not just in court, but in every way. Connor leaned back in his chair, an interested gleam in his eye. So, Ms. Wright, tell me more about your former partner. As they began to discuss the details of the plan, Connor felt a long overdue excitement. It's not just a new client. It's someone who recognizes his capacity for vengeance. Life sometimes moves forward in unexpected ways. What Olivia and Michael are trying to destroy not only survives, but is stronger than ever. He stopped thinking about Olivia and her possible struggles. Her punishment will last for the rest of her life, forever living in defeat and shame. Michael, too, has fallen from grandiose dreams to everyday struggles. And Alex Harrington, the manipulator hiding behind the curtain, now tastes his own poison. As Diana leaves, she shakes Connor's hand again. I look forward to working with you, Connor. I'm sure you understand what true vengeance means. Connor smiled. One thing is certain, Diana. Those who choose to betray me will eventually regret that decision. Forever. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.